Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving right in to demystify what it actually takes to move from being just a transactional manager to a truly transformational leader. So often we just think of leadership as, well, a title, right? Or maybe a set of technical skills. But real leadership? It's defined far more by personal qualities, things like empathy, conviction, and a deep, deep internal awareness. So we're going to unpack a highly structured roadmap for developing exactly those qualities. It's called the Insights Discovery Transformational Leadership Model. Now, take a look at the massive awareness gap staring right back at us. Research shows that an overwhelming 95% of people genuinely believe they are self-aware. But get this, in reality, when actually tested, only 10 to 15% truly are. I mean, that is a hilarious, but honestly kind of terrifying 85% blind spot across the workforce. And that gap? That's exactly where poor communication, team friction, and low morale take root and spread like wildfire. So how do we fix it? Well, the Insights Discovery Transformational Leadership Model, or IDTL for short, is essentially the ultimate scaffolding designed to help you cross that gap. It helps you discover what we call your true leadership shadow. And listen, every single leader casts a shadow. It's basically the real impact you have on your organization. This framework is a game changer because it takes you way past your conscious persona, who you simply believe you are, and reveals how your team is actually experiencing you on a daily basis. Here's our roadmap for today, moving from the very center of self-awareness all the way outward. We're going to cover the awareness gap, the foundational 4 color energies, the 4 manifestations of leadership, navigating leadership tensions, the 8 dimensions, and finally, translating all this insight into actual action. All right, let's jump straight into section 1, the awareness gap, which is literally the foundation of performance. The core premise here is actually pretty simple. Leading yourself and openly acknowledging your own blind spots is the absolute mandatory first step before you can effectively lead an organization. Seriously, you simply cannot guide a team to high performance without having a deeply reflective understanding of your own internal motivations first. It's just not going to happen. So what does a self-aware leader actually look like? Well, they recognize their internal drives and the specific, tangible impact they have on the people around them. They lead from a place of pure authenticity. And here's the kicker. They don't just know their good day gifts. No, they are keenly, sometimes painfully, aware of their bad day triggers and personal biases. We need to stop thinking of this level of self-awareness as just some fluffy, soft skill. It is literally the primary engine of high performance. To put the power of this into perspective, look at the engineering firm Technip. By leaning into this exact self-awareness framework, they transformed their entire culture from just simple transactional safety compliance into a unified transformational vision. Their leaders actually stopped just bossing people around and telling them to follow the rules, right? Instead, they started identifying their own personal leadership styles to inspire true, genuine commitment to safety. And because of that deeper awareness, Technip absolutely rocketed from number 10 all the way to number 1 in global safety rankings over a 10-year period. Incredible stuff. Moving right along to section 2, the 4 color energies, where we start building the core. Now we're getting to the fun stuff. This breaks down those energies into practical, everyday behaviors. Think of it like this. We all have access to all 4 of these energies, kind of like a palette. But we definitely have our natural go-to preferences. For instance, cool blue energy is super methodical. It's all about precise rationale and solid logic. Then you have fiery red, which is direct, incredibly pragmatic, and brings a huge sense of urgency to the table. Sunshine yellow? That's your dynamic, persuasive energy. It's a real catalyst for future growth. And finally, earth green is highly supportive, helpful, and just deeply, deeply values-driven. Okay, hold on. Before we go a single step further, we absolutely have to bust the labeling misconception. Listen, being a red or a blue leader just signifies your natural preference. It does not limit your capability to use the other energies. You are not trapped in a box. High-performance leadership is all about agility. It's having the situational awareness to intentionally dial these different energies up or down depending on what your team actually needs from you in that specific moment. And when an entire team gets this, the results are completely off the charts. The global firm Organon used this exact shared language of color energies to align their supply chain team across 3 different continents. By using these colors to interpret how their colleagues worked and to spot friction before it blew up, they built true professional intimacy.
They actually achieved daily collaboration satisfaction levels exceeding 90%.
Okay, let's step it up a notch with Section 3, the 4 manifestations of leadership, which is all about combining those energies. Notice how the middle ring of this model introduces the 4 manifestations. These basically represent how your specific cocktail of color energies is actually perceived by the people around you. You've got the results leader, who pulls heavily from blue and red to just ruthlessly drive task efficiency. Then there's the visionary leader, combining red and yellow to pioneer bold future possibilities. The relationship leader uses yellow and green to foster really deep, meaningful collaboration. And the centered leader, they draw on green and blue to stay incredibly grounded in the present moment, always maintaining a clear sense of purpose. But again, beware of the static style fallacy. That's the dangerous idea that you are somehow stuck in just one of those manifestations for life. The global water filtration company Brita totally shattered this myth. They created a unified leadership culture where 2,400 employees learned to flex their styles fluidly across all 4 manifestations, depending on what the situation demanded. They proved that knowing your default home base is just the starting line. The real magic, that happens when you intentionally step out of your comfort zone and into those other manifestations. This brings us to Section 4, Navigating Leadership Tensions, which is essentially the continuous balancing act of being a boss. You see, there is a constant dynamic tension inherent in leadership. It's like a tightrope walk. Push way too hard for results without considering your people, and you completely stifle team initiative and empowerment. Everyone just shuts down. But on the flip side, lean way too heavily on relationships without setting any real standards, and you end up with a super happy team that entirely lacks boundaries and direction. It's a classic trap. Your greatest strengths, when overused, very quickly morph into your biggest liabilities. And it's the exact same story across the other axes. An overfocus on being centered, staying super grounded and reflective, can eventually lead to sheer organizational stagnation if you aren't actively adapting to change. On the flip side, being an endlessly visionary leader without ever coming back down to earth creates this frantic, chaotic environment where your team is just constantly confused about the actual day-to-day priorities. It is always a duality, always a balancing act, but managing this tension definitely works in the real world. Take Schneider Electric's finance team. They realized that an overfocus on centered and results leadership had created these incredibly rigid internal silos. People weren't talking. By recognizing that imbalance, they consciously chose to flex their style toward relationship leadership to raise their awareness of others. And guess what? That single intentional shift broke down the silos entirely and dramatically increased psychological safety across the whole team. All right, moving into the home stretch with Section 5, the 8 leadership dimensions. Now we're looking at the outer ring. As we look around the outside edge of this framework, we see that each of these 8 dimensions pulls specifically on certain color energies. We're talking about things like agile thinking, leading change, fostering teamwork, and communicating with impact. It's fascinating how a dimension like leading change naturally draws so heavily on that direct, urgent, fiery red energy, while something like facilitating development really pulls from the supportive earth green. But here's the catch. Driving hard for results without weaving in fostering teamwork just won't produce sustainable success. You need the whole picture. We really need to dispel the natural talent myth, this limiting idea that you can only be truly good at the dimensions that perfectly match your dominant colors. Medtronic actually used these exact 8 dimensions to prove a point. They took their top senior executives and showed them how to master any area, completely regardless of their natural color preference. By consciously choosing to flex into their less preferred energies, that executive team achieved dramatically elevated agility and much higher retention of top talent. The takeaway here, you absolutely can master every single inch of this wheel. And that brings us to our final stop, Section 6, Translating Insight into Action using the G-Wave model. Because, let's face it, simply knowing your color profile isn't enough. You actually need a system to grow. That's where the G-Wave model comes in. By applying this, you actively evolve your leadership style from just being a static psychological profile on a piece of paper into driving dynamic, real-world business results. It goes like this. First, G, articulate a specific goal based on those 8 dimensions. Then W, determine the why. Why does this actually matter to your team? A, detail the exact actions you're going to take. V, visualize the true impact of your success. And finally, E, engage. Identify exactly who is going to support you on this journey. So take a step back and think about the full transformational wheel we've walked through today.
Reflect on those foundational energies, the 4 manifestations, and the 8 dimensions of action. Now, I want you to ask yourself, what kind of leadership shadow are you casting today? And honestly, more importantly, what shadow do you want to cast tomorrow? The ball is in your court. Keep flexing your style, keep expanding your awareness, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.